Good afternoon, class. My name is Daniel, and today I will be delivering a brief to you on effective delegation and delegation techniques. A few of the points I'm going to cover today in today's briefing will be effective delegation techniques, why a leader should delegate or would want to delegate, and lastly, we'll be covering how to delegate effectively without losing control of your team or organization. So without further ado, jumping right into it, my first point is why a leader would ever choose to delegate his or her tasks or workload. And I guess really a better question to ask starting off is why would a potential leader be reluctant to delegate their workload or tasks to a subordinate? And I find asking that question pretty much answers why we should. So oftentimes leaders are afraid to delegate tasks, especially young leaders are afraid or hesitant rather to delegate tasks because they don't want to be looked at as the boss that's shucking their responsibility or trying to pass their workload off on their subordinates. And it can be confused like that. If the task is not delegated efficiently and effectively, the subordinates may be left feeling like you are passing the workload onto them, which is going to cause a hostile work environment in the end. So some of those barriers to delegation would be the reluctance by the leader because they don't know how to delegate effectively. They don't want to be looked at as a bad leader or brushing their workload off again. And also they just might not know the benefits. They might think that they can do it better than the subordinate can, so why shouldn't I just do it? Well, when the leader gets trapped in that thought process and that mentality of I can do it better, they tend to take on too much of the workload. And then when you start trying to juggle all your tasks, you have everything and your subordinates are feeling left out. They feel incompetent or that you may not be able to trust them. So it starts to build a division where you see you're being efficient because you can handle the tasks and maybe you can. Maybe that leader is multifaceted and can handle multiple tasks at once. But you're not doing your subordinates any justice or growing them and developing them as you should to be future leaders within your organization. What you're doing is making them dependent on your decision-making ability, which is going to serve no purpose in the long run. So which leads to why a leader should delegate, and that's to alleviate the problems that we just talked about. We should delegate as leaders to empower our subordinates to be decision makers on their own. We want to grow and cultivate leadership within our ranks. And the best way to do that is to delegate tasks. By delegating the task, you're ensuring that the subordinate can use their mind creatively, problem solve, and come up with a solution on their own. That way, everything doesn't fall to pieces when you as the leader, as the senior leader, are not there. Maybe you took a day off, maybe you have a sick day, or you're on vacation. What have you, you want to know that your workplace is still running efficiently even when you're not there. The achieving of organizational goals is paramount. Obviously, that's why we're in our chosen professions in the first place. Everybody's there to achieve those organizational goals. And by delegating, I as the leader, or you as the leader, I lessen my workload personally, and I can more effectively manage what is important for me as the senior leader to have my hands in, while at the same time I'm giving that low-hanging fruit to the subordinates. So not only am I growing them, but I'm also being more proficient, or rather more efficient with my time management skills. I don't have to do everything. Everything doesn't take my eye set. I don't need to have my hands in everything. And even more importantly than that, in my opinion, when we delegate, we're also going to de-stress our lives. When you're taking work home with you at the end of the day, when you're chronically staying late nights at the office, when you're not taking vacation days, you're coming in on the weekend, that is no way to live your life. Eventually, that's going to take a toll on you physically and mentally, and potentially even bleed over and cause problems in any relationships, personal relationships outside of work you may have. So again, that effective delegation, why we want to delegate, it's going to de-stress us, it's going to grow our subordinates, and it's going to effectively manage our time so we can get after the higher echelon do-outs that do require that senior leadership touch. So we know why we should delegate, but the question is left how we should delegate. how does a leader know how to delegate effectively? I could simply just give a subordinate a task and say, hey, this needs to be accomplished. That is not delegation, however. That is just telling a subordinate to accomplish a task. Delegation is much more than just saying a task needs to be done. Delegation is coaching, mentoring, and follow-up. A plan of action needs to be developed. So we need to answer the why to the subordinate. Why did I choose you as a subordinate for this specific task? And explain the skill set that they bring to this challenge, and explain to the subordinate what you expect as a finished product. Always be open for that subordinate to come to you and ask for help, but let them know you expect them to be able to problem solve this 90% on their own. And again, go over why you chose them for the task and why the task is important overall for the whole organization's completion. In choosing that subordinate for the task, you need to carefully consider the tools that subordinate already has. A task might be at a higher level of operation than that subordinate is comfortable working at. If you give a task that's too over the head of an individual, they might drown and they might just shut down, and it's going to do the inverse of actually growing them. So we want to kind of match the task difficulty with what the skill level of that individual already is. We don't want side to side apples and apples. We want a little bit of level of difficulty over what they're comfortable working in, but we don't want to overload them to the point where they just shut down completely. Again, you need to consider the workload of that individual and yours, because just simply saying, hey, here's the task, go out and complete it, is not delegating. You need to be able to follow up with the subordinate, set deadlines, check in with the subordinate, and again, give constructive feedback and coach them in that decision-making process. As a leader, you own, at the end of the day, as a leader, you own the failures and the accomplishments of your team. So if that subordinate you chose for delegation falls through in the end, that's a failure on your part because you did not effectively delegate and manage that subordinate through completion of the task. And then we're going to go into delegating without losing control. So it's easy to start delegating, right? We know there's proper delegation techniques now. We know what we need to do to get into that. But there might come a point in time where there's so many things going on in our work center that we might become overwhelmed with how many subtasks we are managing along with accomplishing our own tasks. And what I mean by that is it goes back to the previous topic of where we delegate and have to follow up. If I, as a leader, am delegating tasks and in turn I'm not following up, those subordinates may go rogue and just start making decisions that you're not comfortable letting them make at their authority or decision-making level. So that's why it's very important to follow up and coach them along in that process. You need to clearly define the outcome of what you expect to be accomplished. Do not give them an open-ended story. Do not write them a blank check, and any decision they make is fine. They need to have defined boundaries, both a left and a right limit. They need to know they need to operate inside of those limits, and that within those limits you expect them to make the accurate decisions needed. Again, identify the constraints and boundaries of the task so the subordinate has a framework to work within. Again, time is a commodity. It's often said in business, time is money, and that couldn't be more true. The more we can get accomplished to reach organizational goals, the more potential for profit our organization is going to have. If I can manage my tasks that require that senior leader's touch, while my junior leaders are handling tasks that may not need my oversight directly, then I'm going to maximize both my efficiency and the company's overall efficiency at the same time. As a benefit, I'm also going to grow future leaders to replace me in my absence when I get promoted or when I retire or when I leave the organization. I know that the success is still going to be there because I've molded subordinates and grown them in the way that they should be. Again, effective delegation goes a long way in the overall productivity of the workplace. And when a leader can learn to harness and utilize the techniques needed in effective delegation, you're going to exemplify your personal attributes as well as mitigating those negative attributes from within the organization as a team that we want to get rid of that may hamper positive results. Again, my name is Daniel, and thank you for listening to my brief.